Matthew 24, verse 1, it says, "Now as Jesus was departing from the temple, his disciples approached to show him the buildings of the temple. In response, he said to them, 'Do you not see all these things? Truly I say to you, by no means will a stone be left here upon a stone and not be thrown down.'" Jesus was showing them that all this stuff you see, this temple and everything, not a stone be left upon a stone. And this happened in 70 CE, did it not? Which proves that Jesus is the true prophet, and the Jews have no excuse for denying that he is who he said he was and is, the Messiah, the Son of God. And the law was like a manual for the temple. In other words, to fulfill the law, you need a temple, and that temple would be destroyed in 70 CE, and that would show that God had moved on to a new covenant, which involved people who have faith in Jesus. As the Bible says, those who have faith in Jesus are children of Abraham. So we have a new Israel, Israel by the Spirit, therefore we know no man by the flesh. Now verse 3 says, "While he was sitting on the Mount of Olives, the disciples approached him privately, saying, 'Tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign of your presence and of the conclusion of the system of things?'" Now this is out of the New World Translation that I printed this out from. They used the word presence. Notice they were asking when these things would happen, the sign of his presence. And you can translate it presence if you context it properly, but actually the word is coming, and that's part of the words that can be translated for the word parousia, which the Watchtower translates as presence. Most translations use the word coming, and coming is very appropriate, as we will see. They asked, what will be the sign of your coming? They didn't ask for signs, but a sign. And that's interesting to take note of. The Watchtower tried to say a composite sign. That's not mentioned here, composite. But they asked for a sign, not signs. And the conclusion of the system of things. I think as we go through this, we'll understand that the coming of Jesus and the conclusion of the system of things are one and the same. In verse 4 it says, "In answer Jesus said to them, 'Look out that nobody misleads you. For many will come on the basis of my name, saying, I am the Christ, and will mislead many.'" And so here Jesus was warning, watch out for those who claim to be anointed, claim to be I am he. Many will be misled, but don't fall for that. So what that would call for, would it not, is that you would have to be doing like the Bereans at all time, like the ancient Bereans, examining to see if these things were so. You would never put your trust in men. You would always verify to see if what they're saying is true. And usually when they come out and say, I'm the Christ, which something Jesus really never did. I mean, he did on certain occasions, but he kept it quiet, and he told others to keep it quiet. When he start making this statement, that's a sign that something bad is going on. It's not good. And we see this happen many times since Jesus left and went back to heaven. And with the Watchtower, we see they've done that with the Lord's Supper. They've taken that supper meal and used it as a means to identify certain ones as anointed, which is what Jesus warned about. So we have to be very careful, and we do that by testing all things. And then verse 6 says, "You're going to hear of wars and reports of wars. See that you are alarmed, for these things must take place, but the end is not yet." So even though there are wars, it doesn't mean the end is about to happen. You're going to hear those things. Verse 7, it says, "For nation will rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom, and there'll be food shortages and earthquakes in one place after another. All these things are the beginning of pangs of distress." So they don't indicate that the end is coming, but there are things that will happen, nation against nation, which really is about ethnos versus ethnos, or race versus race. That's been a continual problem since Jesus went back to heaven. Kingdom against kingdom, the wars. Jesus didn't talk about world war or anything like that. He was just letting you know, these are the things that are going to happen, you're going to have to endure. It doesn't matter how big or how large or how small. These are the things that will happen before the end comes, that you're going to have to endure. Then verse 9 says, "People will hand you over to tribulation and will kill you, and you'll be hated by all the nations on account of my name." If the world loves you, there's a problem. They hate you, this usually means that you're telling the truth. And that means you're doing the will of Christ. So if you're going to be a Christian, persecution is unavoidable. Verse 10, it says, then too, many will be stumbled and will betray one another and will hate one another. So many will be stumbled. The time that goes by, the delay as it may seem, many will be stumbled. Many are stumbled by false Christians and so forth. Just many things that bring doubt into people's mind and they become stumbled. And instead of really investigating the matter properly, they begin to turn to doing what's wrong and hate one another. And that becomes a factor, the hatred. They don't have the hope for the future, so they have hate. Verse 11 says, many false prophets will arise and mislead many, and because of the increasing of lawlessness, the love of the greater number will grow cold. But the one who has endured to the end will be saved. So here we see again the false prophets. That's why you always have to be in that Bible all the time, because the false prophets will be all over the place. And then you have the increase of lawlessness. These things just continue, and people say, where's God? All this stuff is happening. And their love will grow cold. It's like many just give up. But the one that's endured to the end will be saved. So, these are the things Jesus said, okay, I'm going back to heaven, but things are not going to get better on the earth. So you're going to have to endure. Verse 14, and the good news of the kingdom will be preached in all the inhabited earth for a witness to all the nations, and then the end will come. So that's the work. Until Jesus returned, preaching would be the work. And that's what has been done since the first century, and it's supposed to continue to be done right up into our time period. Verse 15, therefore, when you catch sight of the disgusting thing that causes desolation, as spoken about by Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place, let the reader use discernment. Then let those in Judea begin fleeing to the mountains. Let the man on the housetop not come down to take the goods out of his house, and let the man in the field not return to pick his outer garment. Woe to the pregnant woman and those nursing a baby in those days. Keep praying that your flight may not occur in wintertime, nor on the Sabbath day. So here it talks about what would happen to Jerusalem, which would bring about the destruction of the temple. So that was part of some of the things that would have to be endured during the last days, was the destruction of the temple. And then when you saw those armies encamped, as Luke brings out, get out of there. Jesus said, flee. And that's what happened in 66 when the Roman armies first came. The Christians remember what Jesus said, and they fled and they didn't come back. But if you delayed, then you were in danger. And when 70 CE came, it was over. Verse 21, for then there will be great tribulation, such as has not occurred since the world's beginning until now, no, nor will occur again. Now the word here in verse 4, then there will be, for is the Greek word gar. It can be translated however. Therefore you could read it however, then there will be great tribulation. This great tribulation was not what happened in Jerusalem. It was a future tribulation that would happen. It'd be worse than any other period of time. And this tribulation would be indicative of the devil being cast down, as Revelation 12 brings out, and would be a reason why it would be so bad. In fact, unless those days were cut short, no flesh would be saved. But on account of the chosen ones, those days would be cut short. So the tribulation will be really bad, but God has it measured as far as how long it can go, so that people will not totally be obliterated. Verse 23, then if anyone says to you, look, here is the Christ, or there, do not believe it. For false Christs and false prophets will arise and will perform great signs and wonders as to mislead, if possible, even the chosen ones. Look, I have forewarned you. Therefore, if people say to you, look, he's in the wilderness, do not go out. Look, he's in the inner rooms, do not believe it. For just as the lightning comes out of the east and shines over to the west, so the coming of the Son of Man will be. Wherever the carcass is, there the eagles will be gathered together. So here it tells us here that if someone tries to announce the return of Christ, he's here or there or whatever, don't listen to them. because false prophets will arise. And that's what the Watchtower is engaged in, telling people when Christ is returned in 1914. That's fulfillment of Bible prophecy right here. Or anyone trying to tell you when the end's going to come, we know they're a false prophet. And many will be misled. Because what? They were not continuing to make sure of all things, as the Bible says. But the coming of Jesus will be like the lightning that comes out of the east and shines over the west. You see lightning out in the sky, no one has to tell you that lightning's out there. You can see it for yourself. And that's why no announcement is necessary for when Jesus returns. No one's going to be saying Jesus has returned or that he is here now. No. When his coming or presence happens, there will be no need for any announcement. Verse 29, immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light, and the stars will fall from heaven, and the powers from the heavens will be shaken. Then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven, and all the tribes of earth will beat themselves in grief, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. So here, finally, Jesus gets to the sign. It talks about the darkness and so forth that would happen before this destructive event happens, which is the thing that always happens when God brings judgment. There's darkness. And so this, before Jesus' return, there will be darkness. The sun will be darkened, moon, and so forth, will not give its light. And then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in the heaven. And so that's the sign. There is no composite sign. There's no signs of the last days. The Bible never speaks of signs of the last days. There is a sign. And when that sign appears, how many people see it? Everyone's going to see it. And this will be the coming of Christ. And so the nations will beat themselves in lamentation and so forth. And so if you say a presence, okay, it could be that sign could just sit there like a presence for whatever period of time, which would allow for these emotions to come out, this beating themselves in lamentation and so forth, the weeping and gnashing of teeth. If it just sat there for a little bit, that could allow for these emotions to come out. But then the destructive event will happen because the Son of Man is returned. But it is a coming, and it's really more of a coming than a presence. But if you context it that way, where that sign happens, and it sits there for a while, causing people to bring about all these fearful emotions. But again, there is no sign of the last days. The Bible never speaks of signs of the last days. There is this one sign. We have not seen that sign yet. When that sign happens, that is destruction. Verse 31 brings out, and he will send out his angels with a great trumpet sound, and they will gather his chosen ones together from the four winds, from one extremity of the heavens to their other extremity. So here we have the resurrection of those first fruits going to heaven. Whoever they are, whoever God chooses, they are in heaven, going to be in heaven with Jesus. And the Bible says they will be there in time to be a part of this destructive force. Verse 32 says, now learn this illustration from the fig tree. Just as soon as this young branch grows tender and sprouts its leaves, you know that the summer is near. Likewise also you, when you see all these things, know that he is near at the doors. Truly I say to you that this generation will by no means pass away until these things happen. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will by no means pass away. So here, everything Jesus says here is confirmation to Christians that, okay, these things are happening, but Jesus forewarned us. So it's not a sign of us to doubt, or it's not something that causes us to lose faith, but it's to realize that Jesus told us, so we're going to have to endure these things until the end. So we have the hope, even though we have to endure these things. In Jerusalem, when the destruction came, when they saw those armies camped around, that was really an evident sign to get out. And so they trusted Jesus' words and went about doing what he said, flee to the mountains, and they were able to save their lives. So everything Jesus says keeps us abreast of what we have to go through And we're not going to lose faith and say, well, where is Jesus? No, we know that these things show us, confirm that if we keep doing what's right, eventually the end will come. And as Jesus mentioned, this generation, he pointed to this generation. He didn't point to a future generation or overlapping generation. He was talking about the generation of his time, and that the things that he said that would happen to them would occur, and they would not fail in their fulfillment. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will by no means pass away. Yes, the heaven and earth, this old heaven and earth will pass away, but Jesus' words will not pass away. And so that generation at that time experienced those conditions. They experienced the stone not left upon the stone, the destruction of Jerusalem, all those things they experienced. But Jesus' words went beyond that generation to the time when the sign of the Son of Man would appear. And that would go beyond. So really in Jesus' words here, he was including what would happen to that generation, but also what would happen beyond it until the end would come. Concerning that day or hour, nobody knows, neither the angels or the heavens, nor the Son, but only the Father. For just as the days of Noah were, so the presence or coming of the Son of Man will be. For as they were in those days before the flood, eating and drinking, men marrying and women being given in marriage, until the day that Noah entered into the ark. And they took no note until the flood came, and swept them all away. Yet so the coming of the Son of Man will be. Then 2 men will be in the field, one will be taken along, and the other abandoned. 2 women will be grinding at the handmill, one will be taken along, and the other abandoned. So here we see that, just like in the days of Noah, so it will be with the coming of the Son of Man. They're going to just go about the regular routine of life, ignoring what Jesus said, ignoring that an end is coming. They're just going to do everything and take no note of it. And then, just like in Noah's time, the flood came. That was the event. It brought about destruction. Before the flood came, they had the opportunity to go in that ark, but they didn't do it. And so, but then the flood came. Same thing with the coming of Christ. People will be doing what they want to do and take no note of the time we're living in. And then that coming will happen. Just like the flood was a destructive event, the coming of the Son of Man is a destructive event. And they're going to be doing the same thing they did prior to the flood, not taking any note. Yes, as Jesus said, no one knows the day or hour, not even Jesus. He doesn't even know. And so that shows that he's not God, because he doesn't know the day or hour. And anyone that stands up and says they know, case closed. You already know they're false teachers. 2 men in the field, one will be taken, one other abandoned. So it just shows the closeness of people, that the destructive event, one, no matter how close you are to that person in proximity to them, one will be saved, one won't be saved. All because they didn't take advantage of the time period of mercy. Verse 42, keep on the watch, therefore, because you do not know on what day your Lord is coming. So we don't know when the coming of Christ is, so we have to keep on the watch all the time. We have to be, making sure of everything. We have to test everything. We have to examine the scriptures, test ourselves to see if we're in the faith. We have to make sure of all things. We have to be like the ancient Bereans, examining everything. We have to do everything possible to keep from being misled and deceived, because that will divert us from being ready when the Lord comes. In verse 43 it says, but know one thing, if the householder had known in what watch the thief was coming, he would have kept awake and not allowed his house to be broken into. On this account, you too prove yourself ready, because the Son of Man is coming at an hour that you do not think to be in. So again, the warning of stay on the watch, be woke at all times, because it's going to happen at a time that you don't think it to be in. So a Christian has to be ready at all times by keeping woke, keeping awake, prove yourself ready. You just don't claim you're something. You prove it by the scriptures. You prove it by being obedient to the scriptures. In verse 45 it says, who really is the faithful and discreet slave whom his master appointed over his domestics to give them their food at the proper time? Happy is that slave if his master on coming finds him doing so. Truly I say to you, he will appoint him over all his belongings. So here it talks about this faithful and discreet slave who's appointed over his domestics to give them their food at the proper time. It's a spiritual food. Now, if he's faithful and endures to the end, when the master returns, which is the conclusion of the system of things, and he's proven faithful, then Jesus is just going to give him more work to do. He's going to appoint him over all his belongings. So this is not just the general population of Christians, of true Christians, but it's those who have oversight, who have responsibility over the sheep. As Peter says in 1 Peter 5, 1 through 4, as he was one of those, he was telling the elders in other congregations, you be faithful shepherds, so that when Jesus returns, he'll reward you. So all those who are appointed as elders and overseers fall into what Jesus is saying here. They have oversight over the domestics, where they care for the sheep, where they look for the lost, where they help the poor, help the weak, where they do their job and keep helping God's people, the ones they have oversight on. If they do, anyone who is appointed as an overseer or elder or older man or bishop or whoever, a pastor, if they're doing their job right, and when Jesus comes back, he's going to reward them. He's going to give them more work to do. Verse 48 says, but if ever that evil slave says in his heart, my master is delaying, and he starts to beat his fellow slaves and to eat and drink with the confirmed drunkards, the master of that slave will come on a day that he does not expect, an hour that he does not know, and he will punish him with the greatest severity and will assign him his place with the hypocrites. There's where his weeping and the gnashing of his teeth will be. So here you have a slave that's proved faithful. When Jesus returned, then you have the slave that because of the delay, and that's the crucial thing that brings a person's downfall, is the delay, enduring to the end. Because of the delay, the slave begins to take privileges, to use his authority improperly, to abuse the sheep, to look out for his own selfish interests instead of those of the sheep. And we see that over and over and over again throughout history since Jesus went to heaven, that, as Jesus said, as Paul said, many will rise up and speak twisted things. And so we've seen this since Jesus went back to heaven. Many have stood up and fulfilled this prophecy of being leaders in a church or whatever, and proved to be ravenous wolves and abusing the sheep, abusing other people, not having honor for all men, and enslaving people, misleading people, just doing all kind of wickedness. You can tell by their fruits. And so when Jesus comes back, he's going to cut them up. He's going to destroy them. He's going to destroy them with the greatest severity. And when Jesus returns, they'll be weeping and gnashing their teeth as they see that sign. They'll probably be saying, Lord, Lord, didn't we do this in your name, and didn't we do that in your name? And he's going to tell them, I never knew you. Get away from me. And Jesus was waiting for the opportunity to tell them that after all their wickedness that they've engaged in. And so here we have it. Ones who have the opportunity to watch Jesus' sheep and take care of them and be a faithful and discreet slave, and those who use such oversight improperly. Ones like the Watchtower, who declared themselves faithful and discreet before Jesus' return, which shows that they are false in what they're saying, because it's only Jesus that can declare the slave faithful and discreet, and he's not doing that until he returns, and that return is yet to happen. That sign is yet to be seen, and then he will declare such ones as faithful and discreet. last days have been going on since the first century. And we are now, can be said, based on Daniel 2, in the last of the last days. And so it's even more important that those who want to get the seal of approval by Jesus when he returns, when that sign actually happens, that it will be a sign of deliverance, not of grief and weeping and gnashing, that we have to get right. And we have to start saying, I got to do what's right. I got to do what Christ wants me to do. So when he comes back, it won't be disappointment, but it will be an entrance into a new world.